Hey guys, Garrett, your local INFJ here. It's been a while. I've actually been working on something pretty cool. Okay. All right, let's not get our expectations so high. It's not pretty cool. Relax. It's all right. I've been working on something a little bit different than what I usually do. A little bit more comprehensive, if you will. So I hope you guys like it. Maybe it'll be ready by Tuesday. That's what I'm shooting for. So in the meantime, I wanted to just say what's up and actually drop a little bit of good news on you. And that is that I'm feeling optimistic. Now I know that makes your day, and now everything's good for you in your world too, because I'm feeling good. I don't know. So this is my whole thing with these video logs, these vlogs, is that I'm always like, do people care? I don't know why people would care how I'm feeling, but here, this actually might be a little uplifting for everybody else too, because the thing that was weighing me down was the heaviness of this moment that we're in. Okay, we have a coronavirus. Okay, we're on lockdown. We have racial injustice, protests and tension reaching a climax in the country. So there's been a lot of stuff in 2020 for people. And while I do, as a Black person, this attention from everyone on racial injustice and people who, whose eyes have finally seemingly opened for maybe the first time, while it's really super positive, it's also required me to be I guess kind of like a teacher a lot. And I willingly and happily do it. It's just tiring, people coming to me with questions. And I guess I am, in a sense, in a unique position as a Black person that grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, but with a Black family. And being light-skinned, to be honest, I've kind of been able to see both sides. I've kind of been privy to the Black painful experience, and also I've been witness to the privilege on the other side, and also just the I don't want to say ignorance, because ignorance is such a harsh word, but just the lack of understanding, because it's not a part of everyone's world, and some people might not understand it because they don't have to deal with it. So I've been exposed to all that. Anyway, I say all of that to say that it's been heavy. However, there to me has been points of serious optimism. And there have been people trying to make changes, real institutional changes to the way that the system might not be fair. There have been people who have been marching. The number of white people that are with Black people on this is amazing. It literally almost brings a tear to my eye. And the number of white friends that I have that have been hey G, talk to me, talk to me about your experience. Tell me what I can tell my parents about this. Tell me what I can tell my friends about this to bring them along too. And yes, guys, yes, that makes me feel good. So one of the things a lot of people, so I have this awesome friend on Instagram. I'll give her a shout out. Why not? Because she does a lot of meditative stuff, meditation stuff. Her name is Annalise. And you can find her on there. I think her tag is Inner Cosmetology, but I will put the tag in text bubbles above my head, so you guys can check her out on Instagram if you want. But so I was having a talk with her just about this moment and about going forward, how we make sure we don't lose sight of the racial equality and the institutional changes after this moment has passed. And so she said something that's pretty insightful. She said she thinks that this is part of people's consciousness now that it wasn't before. And so that is a big change. And as somebody with a psych background, I vouch for that. That's true. So kind of to explain how this works. we form constructs, we form ways of thinking about things that determine the way we interpret like the news or anything that comes our way. So like, you know, if I am pre-inclined to for instance, love wildlife, the first thing I might think when I see a new home construction might be about you know, the trees that have to come down and the suffering to the wildlife. But if I live my life in construction and my mental constructs revolve around building, then I might say, wow, this is awesome. This is a good space. Like, we're going to be able to, like, I might think about the architecture. I might think about the number of homes that can be built. My mind goes somewhere totally different because of my constructs. And the point here is that this moment has awakened a certain consciousness in people that you know, seemingly wasn't awakened before. Meaning that people that weren't inclined to see the way that the system affected Black people on a day-to-day basis, a lot of them are awakened to that. And so if we can permanently change the way people see those things so that they recognize little micro racism, the little things that Black people have to go through every day that add up to the disadvantages and to the pain and to the hurt, then maybe we can really make this change stick. So what I want to do is just go over a few things that we can look for. Like, there are thousands of things that happen on a daily basis, but a few things that we can look for and watch for so that we in the future can recognize these built-in unfair practices, for lack of a better way of explaining things. Okay, so a few things to look for. One is something that's super obvious. The first thing that jumps out to you is how people are treated by the cops, okay? And this is like, a lot of people think this is about like saying all cops are bad cops. A lot of people are saying that because of the pain that because of their life experiences, but obviously it's not true. Cops are people. All of us are people. And the whole deal with this is to be able to see people. The whole philosophy behind Black Lives Matter is to see them as lives, right? To see people as people first and to have some empathy. So obviously all cops aren't bad cops. But what tends to happen is that because society has these built-in stereotypes that we see every day, like just by watching the news, just by talking with our families, we have these built-in implicit, not even things that we know we're saying, but we have these built-in biases to fear Black people more than we fear white people. That is one of the reasons that cops are more of a danger to Black people. When you fear someone and you have a gun, you're more likely to use it on them. When you fear people and they approach you or they resist you, you're more likely to take action because you felt like they were legitimately dangerous. You see them more as like an animal to be put down than someone just to be empathized with and controlled in that way. So in those ways, these implicit feelings that people have affect the daily interactions that Black people might have. If you got a gun pointed at somebody and you're worried that they might have a gun in the car and you identify with them as a human first, you are less likely to shoot them if they reach for their wallet. If you identify them as a threat first, you're more likely to pull the trigger. So what do we do about that? We have to work on sensitivity training. We have to put rules in place so cops follow the rules rather than allowing themselves to be scared. We have to diversify society to a point where we see humans as humans first. There's a lot of things we can do, but the point here in this video is just to be able to recognize these trends, recognize these I'm gonna find the word at some point in this video. These little things that are unfair. Okay, so that's one that like kind of pops out at us a little bit more. But there are many such inequalities that are based on race. Being watched more closely in the store is a big one that Black people talk about a lot, that you've probably heard. Like Black people being followed around. This has happened to me. Usually when I'm in like nicer, wealthier, whiter areas. Like just being followed around, being watched closely by like the security guards. It's you don't really ever get used to it. You become less surprised by it, but it feels bad. Here's a little bit of something like to kind of understand the psychology behind this. There's something called a self-fulfilling prophecy, which means what you believe will be. Meaning that like if a kid is told he's bad, the kid is more likely to behave bad. If someone is told you're going to fail this test, you're not smart enough, you're going to fail it, you're not smart enough, and they believe, wow, maybe I'm not smart enough, they're more likely to fail it. And there's been a lot of studies done on that with children in classrooms who are, if you tell them they're not going to do well, all else being equal, they're less likely to do well. So you take a group of kids and you tell them they're not going to do well and tell them this test is really hard and they're probably not cut out for it, it's above their level. And then you take another classroom of kids and tell them, you guys are going to do great. And both these classrooms were educated in the exact same environment. The class that is given the positive reinforcement will do better. The class that has a negative reinforcement is more likely to fail. And that literally is nothing to do with what they studied, right? That just shows the power of these self-fulfilling thoughts, this self-fulfilling prophecy. So black people, when you're followed around in stores, when you're considered to be a criminal before you are, these things like they become, and you start feeling terrible about yourself, and that becomes self-fulfilling. You start having negative thoughts about yourself, that becomes self-fulfilling. The same thing goes with if you believe someone's going to commit a crime, you're more likely to see that crime. That goes back to the cop situation. You believe these type of people commit this crime more, you're more likely to see them as a threat or see them as committing the crime. It goes both ways. When society is unfair to a group of people, that people suffer both because people treat them badly and unfairly, and they have to suffer the repercussions, and also because they feel worse about themselves, and they're more likely to either behave badly in the future or internalize these negative self-worth feelings. So same thing goes with just walking down the street and people crossing to the other side. That's something that you can notice in everyday life. Watch. It doesn't happen all the time. It happens frequently. It happened to me on college campus all the time. And like my roommates laughed because they said like, what? That's a thing? My white roommates. And I said, yeah, like, watch, so next time, I'm walking down, especially if it's evening or it's getting to be nighttime, I'm walking across campus. And then usually if there's a woman, if there's a white woman coming my way, she tends to cross the street. I'd say maybe 25% of the time. Not that there's anything over there for her. It's just, hey, I'll walk on the grass rather than walk on the same sidewalk as this guy. I don't feel safe. And I don't even know if that's a conscious decision. It's just something that happens over and over. And again, what does that tell, especially a kid and then a teenager, what does that tell them about themselves when someone is always moving away from them, right? So those are things to look for. Those are small things to look for. There's little things to look for at the workplace, where if a resume has a black name, they are a lot less likely to get callbacks. There's been studies done where they fill out the same resumes. They send them to companies, the same resumes. And people with black sounding names get called back less. So these are some of the reasons that we try to reverse the racism at a higher level and say like, hey, well, we need to make this diverse. Like we need to make the workplace diverse no matter what. Because at the lower level, it's very hard to stop people from their subconscious bias. It's very hard how do you stop someone from seeing a resume worse because of a name is different? You can't. So what you have to do is you say, well, you have to at least bring some black people in for the interview, or you have to at least hire some black people because we can't stop what happens earlier. So we try to fix it later. I hope that makes sense. And so that's actually what affirmative action is called. A lot of times that's like a bad word now, it's a scary word, but that's like the roots of affirmative action is that like, okay, we're going to take action, affirmative action to make the workplace a more diverse or more level playing field, because we know that these are built-in biases early on in the process and we have to fix them here. There's obviously way more to it than that, but I'm not trying to bore you with a super long video. So a few more things. I'll run them off really quick. Exercise. Go to the neighborhood with a lot of black people in it. There's probably fewer parks, fewer trails, fewer things off the street for black people to exercise. Food. Go to a black neighborhood, and that black neighborhood is less likely to have healthy places to eat. We call them food deserts. There's a whole process behind how this was created called redlining. But essentially, black people are less likely to live in places with access to healthy foods. And we know how much diet affects how we feel. Business. So since black people were brought over here a long time ago as slaves and owned no property and had no access to anything, they kind of started with a disadvantage, generally speaking. Not all black people came on slave ships, I know that. But generally speaking, we as black people have a disadvantage when it comes to property ownership and business ownership, right? So then, it's harder to get in the door of a business because people have these biases with hiring people that they're familiar with. People hire, when people hire, they hire people they get along with, right? People that fit the company culture, people they like. So we're more likely to get along with people that we're familiar with. So since black people don't own the businesses, they're not really the same culture as a lot of the people that own the businesses, they oftentimes have a disadvantage in interviews and getting hired. Again, while we try to take corrective actions and try very hard intentionally, we have to be intentional about diversity for that reason. What I like to call, are you lost, boy? So this is where you're a black person in a neighborhood where apparently black people aren't supposed to be, and somebody from a porch might be like, are you lost, boy? Or a cop might pull up, roll down his window and be like, are you lost, boy? So it's scary. I know, apparently people are scared of black people, but that's a scary thing for black people, understanding that, if you're in the wrong neighborhood, everyone there, doesn't want you there. It sucks. You feel like you're less than the people there. I even feel like this to this day, to be perfectly honest. When I'm in a wealthy neighborhood, if I'm by myself and I'm not with a group of white friends, I feel like I don't belong. I feel like I can't be here. And it's not because it's a high crime neighborhood, it's because it's a non-black neighborhood. So black people have to deal with that when they go into white neighborhoods. So that's another thing that happens. Now it's more than just the neighborhood though. And this is where it gets weird. It's exactly where this, the whole, the concept of Karen came from, where people are calling cops on black people for doing things that are normal things. A lot of times, if you look at the cases where that happens, it's people assuming that black people are up to no good. And so that's also what happens when you're in a neighborhood. You lost, boy, it's if you're here, you must be up to no good. It's them always assuming that you're a threat wherever you go, or a problem wherever you go, or up to mischief wherever you go. It's to the point where, and one of my friends pointed this out recently, one of my white friends, he said, man, he's he goes birding, he goes hiking off trail, he goes exploring all the time. And he said, man, if I want to go film something, or if I want to go birding, he's I can just go into the back of people's property, or go, to whatever, explore wherever he wants. Well, the worst thing that can happen is someone says, hey man, this is private property, and he has to leave. Black people can't do that because you're going to get the cops coming. You're going to maybe get a don't shoot situation. It's we always have to be wary that we are considered a threat. So that's another thing. Going back to the whole Karen thing, it's people feeling like the black person must be doing something wrong. I think on the news today, I saw someone call the cops on a black person for spray painting Black Lives Matter on his own property. But they assumed it wasn't his property. They came out and had a long discussion with him about who are you? Do we need to call the cops? We know who lives here. We're close with them and it's not you. Obviously they didn't know who lived there because it was him. And it was his own property. And he said this is the whole point, that Black lives are supposed to matter. Now that's a little bit of a different situation, but there are similarities there. It's that people jump to a conclusion oftentimes that the black person must be up to no good. But I mean, at the end of the day, guys, if you want to protect your neighborhood, get to know your neighbors. That's step number one. Another thing is this withdrawal from black people that white people have. Go into a predominantly white area and watch a black person get on an elevator, and then watch a white person get on the elevator, a full elevator. a lot of times you'll see people like go to the corner when the black person gets on. They just feel uncomfortable around the black person, and it's this whole feeling that like, hey, I don't belong here. Like there is something about me that is unappealing to them that they don't like, and they're treating me as less than human because of it. God, isn't it crazy how we can just go on all day with these things? So this is a big one, actually. Okay, this is one that I have a personal example of. So I'm in Beverly Hills. I'm in the store, and I'm looking around, trying to find. I think I was trying to find a gift. Yeah, I was looking for a gift. And so, I'm kind of like going through the shelves, like looking for a gift. Somebody comes over and says, "Excuse me, sir." I said, "Yes." They said, "Can you tell me where to find the bedding?" I said, "The bedding?" "Yes, the bedding." I said, I don't know. I think I saw some pillows back there. Maybe it's near the pillows. Sir, could you walk me down there?" So this happens, of course, this happens to all people, but it happens to black people so much more. You're not good enough to be shopping at this high quality store, so you must work here. So since you do work here, sir, can you show me around? Show me where I can find what I need? Like this, you are assumed to be doing a certain type of work. And that is a microaggression. So another microaggression that is similar to the one I talked about before, where you're at a store and they assume that you must be working there because it's too ritzy for you to be shopping. So my dad actually had this happen to him when I was growing up. We owned a single family home at the end of a block. It was like the nicest home on the block. My dad's out there mowing the lawn, and repeatedly, now mind you, we were the first black family in this white neighborhood, so this happened even more often. He would repeatedly be asked if he contract out. "Oh, you're doing a good job there, sir. Do you contract out? You're doing a good job there, sir. Can I get you to come over here and do mine?" My dad's like, "This is my yard." God, like it's that, like that is covert racism. And it's not even done on purpose a lot of times. These are just the implicit biases that we have. And that's what I want to get you guys to do, is like start noticing some of these things when they happen. So hopefully this video helps you develop a new construct, or start to, where you see these things happen in your day-to-day lives. And not only do you recognize them for what they are, but you also, after you start being cognizant of them, you start trying to fix them, and you start being more understanding of policies that are put in place to try to encourage diversity, because these things need to be fixed. And the more we're around people and see them as human beings, the more we associate with them, the more we know that there's nothing inferior about them because of their skin color or because of their culture. And we stop being scared. We stop being implicitly biased as much as before. So that is the road to racial justice. Hope that helped a little bit. I might do some more videos on this in the future, but my next video is going to be, like I said, something a little bit more interesting. Again, guys, with the expectations, okay? A little bit more interesting. Again, this is Garrett, your local INFJ. Please remember to like and subscribe so that one day, one person might see this video. Peace. Please pay no attention to the bags underneath my eyes. Especially now that I said it. Now I know you're not going to be paying any attention to it. Like I said, things have been exhausting, but there is a reason to hope. There is reason to hope that one day I won't have bags under my eyes. One day I'll live in a world where I'm well rested. What am I talking about? Okay, anyway. Oh yeah, racial injustice. I guess I think that using, and I could be wrong about this, but I guess I think that using personal examples from my own life and from people's lives around the United States is so impactful, because it allows people to put themselves in each other's shoes in ways that just giving stats and examples might not. So, forgive me if I'm always using examples, but that's, I think, the times when people have said, hey, my eyes were open or my opinions changed, to me, it almost always centers around an experience rather than some new data they got. So data is important. Like, to me, like you need data to back up your principles and your logic. But I don't think it changes minds the way that examples do sometimes. There was a specific example that I guess changed the mind or gave an awakening to one of my friends that I was talking to recently. That was an example that happened, I think, in 2016. I'll put the link in the description. It was a police stop that was filmed. A man was pulled over with his girlfriend and her daughter. Just a routine stop. And as he goes up to the car, the man informs him, hey, I have a firearm. Like, proactively informs him, hey, I have a firearm. Just wanted you to make you aware. And so the police officer says, okay, don't go for it. And the man says, I won't. And the police officer says, don't go for it. And he just starts freaking out. And the guy says, I won't. And then the guy's girlfriend says, he won't, he's not. And then the police officer just screams and just unloads bullets into the man and murders him on the spot in front of his girlfriend and her little girl. And the response of the child, as the mother was crying and pleading and screaming, her response wasn't, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening, or it's like, you horrible man, you shot my mom's boyfriend. Instead, it was, Mommy, please don't scream, because I don't want you to get shooted too. And that just shows, I think the reason for the awakening moment for him was that shows a way of thinking that he's never had to have, and a way of thinking that Black people grow up with. It's like, hey, be careful, because you were considered a threat no matter what you do, and that might get you killed at that age. And so this shows the social constructs that we talked about. This shows like the perspective, the experiences that a Black child goes through. The Black child's first impulse would be like, Mommy, I don't want you to get shooted too. Rather than like, why is this happening? Or like, don't do this to Daddy. It's like, I must be quiet because this is what happens to people like us when we're not. And so that experience, I guess, was like the first awakening for one of my friends, who's kind of an ally, one of my white friends who's an ally in this movement. And so yeah, I guess that's, tell me if you don't agree, but I think that's why it's important to use examples. And so when I say something, I try to give an example to it, and that's why.